The recording is not meant to go anywhere outside of this chabura, because everybody should feel safe that anything that anybody wants to share in this chabura will only stay here. And the reason why I'm recording it is for two reasons. One, because some people may not be able to come to every shir. I can't even tell you how many people said, I may not come today. And also because sometimes people like to go over things. So I'm going to put the recordings available on the WhatsApp. That's why I made a WhatsApp group after the shir. Okay? It won't be immediately because I have to upload it to YouTube. Okay, so I'd like to introduce myself. Since anybody here doesn't know me, my name is Yisrael Frenkel. And I want to share the reason why I have created this workshop. This workshop I've been giving in many different forms, but for the last 6-7 years, hundreds of people. And the reason is that started when I was very young, when I was a young bacher, and I felt very alone in this whole topic. And I basically promised myself that when I get older, I'm going to teach other people, my children, other people, how to deal with the topic of tikkun habris and in an enlightened and positive way. As I got older and started dealing with the world, I realized that the stuff that I had to go through as a child had nothing to do, it paled in comparison to the issues that we have in this dar. And as I learned more and more and dealt with more and more things, I saw that the topic and the issues that people think they're dealing with are completely different than the actual issues. And the chinuch system that we have that is dealing with it is not only not helping, but also hurting. So I wanted to ask all of you to think about for a second. You know, we all know that in this generation, we're inundated with all kinds of negative sexual expressions, and they're very easy and accessible. What do you think is the major issue, the major negativity, the major damage that there is to a person from the fact that they have these experiences? I'm opening up for everybody to think about, what would you answer? What's the big deal? Yaakov.
Maybe the fact that you don't save the novelty and the speciality and the specialness of it for a solo relationship, a monogamous relationship with one woman, that you can start your sexual journey with this one woman and it ends with this one woman, and therefore it's like a massive, much greater connection. Okay.
So there's a novelty, a specialty, something unique that I've had only a singular experience, and that's it. Okay, that's something.
Yeah, maybe. I guess. Meaning. What I'm trying to say, meaning that, that kind of thing. Yeah, like that it's special. That it meaning that it loses its meaning, it loses its specialness. Yeah, that kind of.
Before you answer, David, I noticed you raised your hand, but I wanted to just point out something to you. This is not a stam question. In the world, in the secular world, if you look at the numbers, the amount of people who are, let's say, looking at porn, whether they're married or not married, the way the statistics go, it's basically somewhere close to 100% for men and about 60-70% for women and adults. When it gets to kids, it's a little bit lower, but not a lot lower. Now, in the secular world, they have a discussion if it's a problem or not. And the consensus is that their only real problem is when it becomes addictive. Because addiction means that it prevents you from doing other things in life. But the inherency of looking at pornography is not, okay, yeah, that's what's done. That's what we do now. So, yes. I can't hear you. Your thing is muted. I just under. Now I hear you.
Yeah, thank you. isn't the second problem really that it becomes a dependency? So once you become dependent, like any addiction, you are no longer independent and a truly free person outside of your addictive behavior pattern.
Okay, so you're suggesting that the problem is that I have this need, and that's not good to have needs and to be dependent on needs, and we want to be a person who is free of needs. So you hear the way I presented it to you, that it's not so simple the way you said it, because you could argue the same thing. It's a bad thing to be dependent on your marriage. Okay, so David, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, can everyone hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think that with your first question, it sounds like you're trying to say, besides for addiction, I'd say that it creates a lack of motivation to find the real thing, and also it, I think, creates a false image of what that's supposed to be, or of what you're looking for, and kind of makes you forget about the other aspects that aren't able to be conveyed through pornography or whatever.
Okay. So you're saying that if the issue is more that it messes up your marriage.
Yeah, and it also, I think, reduces the motivation to get married in the first place, probably.
Okay. Good. Okay. Anybody else want to offer anything else?
Just one point, maybe, that it's taking a window of 10 minutes from the marriage, instead of looking at this 10 minutes as a focus and the beginning of a much wider picture of a successful, lasting pleasure, lasting marriage.
Okay. So you're saying that it's minimizing the experience that could be of a person having a full-blown pleasurable experience and being mitzamtzim in something smaller.
Yeah, and eventually, obviously, it doesn't last, and they look for more and more and more, and try and focus again on this window, and if you don't let it spread out on the life overall, you haven't actually maximized the pleasure, the koyach.
Okay, excellent. Anybody else want to add anything? Okay. I would like to broaden the ideas that you're saying. Some of the things that you're saying are included in what I'm saying. Some of the things you're saying are simanim for the things that I'm saying. But there's something much, much deeper that you can even see in the beginning of time when Adam Rishon ate the Eitz Hadas. So immediately afterwards, he saw he was arumim heim, and they had busha. Why did they have busha? And if you want to ask yourself the same question, if you notice, this shir is not so popular. When I put it out into the world, I have to be extremely careful of the nuschos that I say, and some people are like, no, we don't talk about that. How many shirim are there in the world that are talking about the topic of Kedushas habris, and how many people will avoid it like a 10-foot pole because it's a taboo subject? Why is that? And I will ask you a different question from your own personal experiences or the people you've spoken to. When people look at things like pornography, or if they have experiences, let's say maybe it's masturbation, or maybe if they're having sexual relationships that are almost like just haphazard, what is the feeling afterwards? How do they feel about themselves? So it's an international, if you look, I've done a lot of research and saw many different videos. Internationally, no one feels good after a pornography experience. Even though it's something they wanted to do and did it lustfully, afterwards they feel something is wrong. And what this teaches you is there is Eitz Hadas Tov V'Ra. There is an expression of this desire which every single person has an inherent subconscious knowledge that there's something to be embarrassed about. And there's something which is so beautiful that it is the expression of the most deep relationship with us and Hashem, the Kodesh HaKadoshim, that the Kruvim were connected between themselves like Ish v'Isha Me'urim Beinayim, because that is the most truthful expression of the relationship between Shamayim and Ba'aretz, is a woman and a man connecting. So you have two expressions there are in the world. One is extreme beauty, extreme tov, extreme kedusha, and one we all have a subconscious and sometimes very conscious realization there's something ra about it, something bad about it. What is the difference between these two things is the things we're going to be learning about in this shiurim. And I would say that the biggest damage that sexuality brought down in the world through pornography and other things like that in Hollywood is that it encourages the expression and really the midos, the way of relating to that koach, that the right way to do it, the way that's normal to do it, is the way that actually is bad midos. The way that actually makes you into a person who's not a good person. And it encourages us to actually feel not so good at ourselves. If you ever heard the word dirty talk dirty, right? I once saw a person say, you know why marriage is so connective? It's because the most darkest part of yourself your wife sees. Right? There's two different expressions in the world. And what we're going to be learning is that the midos that are presented in many parts of the world are one that actually are dirty. Actually things that you yourself find negative. The problem with pornography is that it teaches you about yourself. And when a person finds themselves being attracted to things that they themselves know are bad, they now start thinking that they are themselves bad. And I want bad. And they have an embarrassment. They won't talk about it. They'll think that every time the conversation is going to say, you are bad. For example, let's say someone saw something that had to do with assault or rape on a pornography thing. They would know inherently to themselves, this is a wrong thing to do, right? But it would be expressed on that screen as something that they want. So they'd have this internal conflict. Wait a minute, I want this, I have a tire for this, but I know it's bad. What does that do to a person? Slowly but surely it erodes away your own self-understanding and teaches you that this koach hanefesh inside of me wants bad things. And if we add to this our chinuch system, which the way it's expressed in most of the world, when you're talking about things like girls and boys having relationships, or things like zera levatala, or even talking about marriage, the general assumption is, no, we don't do things like that. We don't talk about that. And there's all this negativity and hate that is expressed, and we are taught, we stay away from these things because they are bad. So it again ingrains in us this assumption that this taiva itself brings a person to do bad things. And when a person, you know that it says in the Haggadah that one of the things the Mitzrayim did to us, Vayareu asanu ha-Mitzrayim vaya'anunu. So what does the word mean, Vayareu? So if you listen to Chazal say, Kamosh and Emma, Havan yischak malo pen yirbe, right? And they'll become, they told us that we're going to become traitors. The word Vayareu lana means they made us bad. If you go tell somebody you're a traitor, you're a bad person, you're making them bad. So a lot of the chinuch that we've heard in our lives, from Hollywood, from the porn, from the Rabbeim, from the Torah, is this: you are bad. What happens when a person believes they're bad? They end up doing bad things. So the first thing we actually need to do is to redeem, go back to the core and the shoirish of what this koach hanefesh is, and pull it out of this assumption of badness, so we can actually access the pure and beauty of what this koach hanefesh is supposed to be, and from there now relate to it and use it in the world. And this in itself is a work that every person has to do, madregas and madregas and madregas, because it's so embedded in human beings that's why we have a natural embarrassment. Until we get to a place like Avraham Avinu, that Avraham Avinu was able to take out his bris and to say, Eliezer, take a shvu on my bris, because it was completely, totally understood for him. It's a kli of kodesh. It's a sefer Torah. So we're going to be working always with these assumptions that this desire is bad, and this itself is the confusing thing. Before we get to the ability to make decisions, a person has to have an internal belief system that they themselves are pure and beautiful and holy, and then anything that comes out of them can do that. There's a new question of choice, but naturally speaking, they can always get to a place, a core place of holiness and goodness. This is the first topic we're going to be discussing tonight. The second topic we're going to be discussing tonight is the topic of free choice, of bechira. Most of the ways that people use when they're trying to navigate these type of tests, these type of nisyonos, these type of issues, is they use external forces like fear and like control, that even though I really want to do this thing, even though I really do want to look at porn, I really do want to sleep around, but I have all of these safeguards. The first safeguard is, oh my God, I'm going to go to hell. And I'm going to get Yisurim, and I'm going to have Malachia Chabala and all these things to scare the life out of me. Right? That's one safeguard. The second safeguard is that's not going to work. You have to make sure you have a lot of fences. Boys and girls should never talk to each other, and they should be in the same different sides of the street. And we should have filters on our telephones. And we are weak people. We have no power. And the only way we're going to do it is if we make sure we protect ourselves from all of the possibilities of ever getting anywhere near anything wrong. So what that teaches you is that, as one mashgiach recently just told me, he said he didn't even know that it was possible to teach boys not to look at pornography because they're just going to be pulled in. It teaches people not to have responsibility. And it teaches people not to make choices. We are, like the Chazal say, En Adam Nikra Ben Chorin Ad Yasek Batorah. Until a person gets das and they understand themselves and they understand their own power, they're always going to feel schlepped. Schlepped either to do things they don't want to be doing and they think they have no control, or being controlled by the fact they're not doing anything. But to actually choose on their own to make decisions, we are not teaching as a kehila that's what people should be doing. And what happens is that people don't develop their own moral compass. They don't develop their own things that they believe in. They become robotic people. And the same people who seem very, very controlled and they have a lot of gedarim, as soon as a getter breaks, they end up doing the worst things in the world because they never actually owned any concepts, any value system, any power of control, because they were never told they could. So the second goal we're going to be discussing is, how does a person have free choice? How does a person become empowered to decide what they actually want? And from that place, decide. They can decide a lot of things. They can decide for good. They can decide for things that are not so good. But the first thing we want to empower people is to have free choice, which in other words is saying taking responsibility. Okay, so those are the two topics we're going to be discussing tonight. Does anybody have any questions before we start?
Yes. Hi, Rabbi.
Hi, Will.
First off, thank you. This resonates deeply as you were speaking about Pusha. You're speaking about identifying oneself as bad and having a negative cycle with that. Actually, as you were talking about this, I moved places in my house like 3 times before I spoke, because my mom was around, my brother was around, and this is a topic that there's definitely taboo with. Personally, something that came to mind, I don't know if it makes sense, but perhaps separating the idea of pornography and masturbation. I think what you said and you spoke of resonates a lot with the aspect of masturbation, but specifically with the aspect of pornography, but specifically with wasting seed. Even if there's no pornography associated, I think there's an additional, let's say, aspect to it, which has been, and the idea of it really helped me a lot when I started this journey to try to shomer brit, which is just simply looking at it. It is plainly getting immediate self gratification. There's nothing that you earn. There's nothing that you merit that gets you to this place of utmost climax gratification. It's self-given. It is immediate. And there's really no value, and the feeling that you feel afterwards is an expression of I did it myself. It took me 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it is. I went like this, and then straight up like that. This peak roller coaster experience that it is immature and it builds to nothing. Maybe it's a strong word, but it feels, when you look about it from that lens, it feels just pathetic. That one is doing that. That is, I think, aside from everything you said with regards to porn and why the push exists, why do we associate with ourselves with evil, which is a very interesting psychological aspect that is subconscious, that I haven't thought of it that way, but I think this is a different angle on masturbation itself.
So we're going to get into the details of masturbation and all of the ideas that are behind it, but I want to make a point. If you notice, most of the talk, when people talk about the topic of shmiras habris, is always discussing the negative. Right? Always discussing what will happen to you in a negative way. Now, if you listen to the word shmiras habris, the words mean there's something called a bris. And the goal is to protect it. In other words, there's something so amazing in your life that you could have, that you can choose now not to mess it up. We'll be learning that the point of tikkun habris is not to avoid negative. It is to run to positive. And the definition of the negative will be that it blocks the positive. So that's just a way of looking at the whole world. I'm again trying to shift the entire process. Instead of always thinking about running away, fear, and negativity, let's embrace this beautiful koach we had inside of ourselves. The more and more we understand it, the more we'll see what's its potential, and do we want to lose that potential? Okay. So, the first thing I would like to discuss is to go back and to understand. Yes, Yaakov.
Sorry. Just one question. We say, like I've learned, I've been taught by Rabbanim that one shouldn't put themselves b'makom nisayon. Right? We ask Hashem not to put us in a place of nisayon, and that we shouldn't put ourselves b'makom nisayon. So, I would also love to know how that.
Okay, so we'll definitely talk about it. Okay. Before we go into the topic, there is one kinyan ruchani that I would like to encourage everyone to use, to learn how to use and to use it, because it is the single most important part of personal growth and a way of becoming connected to your source. and that is listening. The ability for a person to be listening to themselves is the way they can access all of their Kedusha. One of the things we have to remember about ourselves is that we maybe think that the Torah, we are whatever we are, not such developed human beings, and the Torah comes and makes us who we are. And that's very incorrect. The Torah is nimshal l'mayim. Mayim is what you put into the dirt, but whatever is in the dirt will grow what is naturally there. Our neshamas are the chelek elokam imal. When the Torah is poured on neshama, then we have a beautiful tree, Adam Eitz Hasadeh. But you don't have to create yesh me'ayin all of your deep desires of Kedusha. You don't have to. All you have to do is let the Torah teach you and your own self teach you to listen to your neshama, listen to your holy part of yourselves, and by definition you will find all of the gifts and powers that you need to be successful in this world to connect to Hashem. So the single most important part of any growth at all is to be able to listen to yourself. When you listen to yourself, then you can actually get to the bottom of what's really going on. Because a lot of times we're not hearing, we're not listening, we're not conscious. There can be all kinds of things that are going on, but we realize that that's not the core. There's something else which is a deeper core. And what is really the core of a human being? The core of a human being is Tselem Elohim. And I want to explain what the word Tselem Elohim means, and then I would like to encourage all of you to listen to yourselves and discover what it really means. But Tselem Elohim means that every one of us is a Hashem Katan. Every one of us is a small version of God. Meaning, if God presented himself in a body, he would look like this. That's what a human being is. Which means the core of a human being, even from his body, the core of his ritzonos is his desire to become like Hashem. All of the things we want in the world, that we feel lacking if we don't have them, what are we lacking? When we have a desire for something, we have a taiva for something, what does it mean? It means we're missing something. What are we missing? The core of what we're missing is our ability to become like Hashem. So you will find in all of the desires of a human being, the core element is something completely godly and completely good and completely holy by definition. And if you haven't gotten there, you haven't listened deep enough, because that's who you are. You don't have to reinvent anything. You don't have to create Kedusha. You have to access it. It's naturally in your being. All we have to do is listen and discover it, and let there be such a strong consciousness of it that it'll help us make choices. Does anybody have any questions on that? David?
I guess what we can draw from that, like the only way for that to actually be the case is if we don't define what it is that we're looking for within ourselves, because then it's not us. That's still imposing the values. Meaning we have to, and therefore it must be that there's many different ways to manifest that on an individual basis in terms of what your desires are and where you're going with it. Otherwise, it's kind of an illusion.
Okay, so let me quantify what I said, and maybe it'll help us understand. Let's say a person wants very, very much to buy a Ferrari. Why does he want to buy a Ferrari? Because he wants respect.
Right.
The desire for respect is a holy desire.
That's what I'm saying. I would assume not. I guess that it's generally it's gaiva, it's whatever.
So the Hashem created the entire
There's
world.
gotta be somewhere in there that, you know.
Hashem created the entire world for l'chvodo barasiv afasisiv. We spend all of our life trying to make kvod shamayim. So Tzem Elohim is very driven to have his kavod be expressed in the world. Actually, every single thing we do in the world that we came here to do with Bechir with is a way of us stepping into our value and getting kavod for the fact that we did something special. Every human being wants to be recognized and appreciated for what they are. The issue with the Ferrari is not that he wants kavod. The issue with the Ferrari is how he decided to get that kavod. He satisfied that desire through something which actually isn't true to himself, because it doesn't actually give him any kavod, because it's just something external to him. But the desire is a core desire. What we are now talking about is the core desire. Afterwards, we can discuss how to satisfy it. There are many different practical expressions of that in life, and they can change daily. The secret is not to discuss, first of all, the way to satisfy. The secret is to discuss the actual desire. Then we can get a good handle on it and know where it will actually be satisfied. Can you think about this? The guy who has a Ferrari, how much do you really think he feels kavod?
Probably not that much.
Let's say the guy next to him buys the Ferrari 12. You know, the iPhone 15 that just came out, that everyone's got to go to the store and buy one because, you know, the one that was 14 is b'chal, doesn't do anything good anymore. Like, what happened? Because it's only valuable as long as it's not it's lower than that next guy, meaning it's nothing. So the poor guy was never actually satisfied. So we can take that as a mashal on a sexual desire. There's a deep desire over there that has to do with being like Hashem. If it's not satisfied in the right way, you know what happens? People are still very hungry. You wanted to say something, Mr. Fish?
Yes, Yisrael. That's fine.
Your name is Yisrael, okay.
Yeah. No. Okay. I won't be self-deprecating this time around, but I won't talk about myself. But you know, you asked about this guy who wants the Ferrari. You're saying maybe he needs it because he wants kavod. He wants kavod. Now the question is, maybe because he really wants validation. Maybe he wants to feel good about himself. Maybe that's the reason. Now, I don't know whether this is one and the same thing. Maybe what you're saying, that the kavod and the validation and the feel-good factor and the adrenaline and the chemical reaction in his mind, his brain is haynu hach. Maybe taka is, one and the same. I don't know. But I'm just trying to maybe break that down a little bit and unpack it and to say to you, a lot of times when you want something, you want to feel, why do I want a chocolate? Why do I need a coffee? Why do I need Coca-Cola or something which maybe it's not so healthy, maybe it's not so good for me, that sugar rush, the adrenaline, because I know it makes me feel good. And also, maybe it's one and the same, is that I want to, and I have a need, an intrinsic, like an essential need, which to me is my etzem, the very, like my nucleus is that I need to feel validated. I need to feel like, special, wanted, desired, loved, important. I have to have that something. I have to be worth 2 cents. I have to be worth something, shava kesef, or at least in my own eyes I have to feel that way. So I don't know. It's just my own 2 cents. Sorry for interrupting.
So let me just tell you that these are very, very important thoughts. We're going to be exploring them in grave detail in the 4th and the 5th shir. And you're going to see that a lot of the shorish of the reasons why people have issues with tikkun habris has everything to do with all the things you just said. And they're not even aware of it. We're going to get to that. But I want to keep going back again to the point and not get distracted. Our question is, what is the desire for a person to have a sexual experience with a woman? What is the shorish and omek of that desire? And I'm going to encourage all of you to spend a little bit of time to listen to yourselves. And when I say listen, the first midah that you need to have when you listen to somebody is trust. Trust that what they're going to say is interesting to you. If you go over to somebody, you ask them a question, and you think they're going to say the stupidest things in the world, believe me, you're not going to listen. Or if they're going to say things you don't like, you're not going to listen. But if you actually genuinely want to hear what they have to say, because you value it, then you'll listen very, very well. And what will happen is, that person will want to talk to you, because he has a ozen kashevet, someone listening to him. So your essence will be very interested in talking to you the more and more you give it an ear of respect, that you actually want to hear what it has to express. So here's an opportunity that I'm going to give to you today. And I'm going to encourage you to keep on doing this as the weeks go by. And what you'll probably find is your ability to access the core and the shorish of your being will grow incrementally every time we give a shir, because we're encouraging it and because we're talking and learning Torah, which encourages that part of you to blossom and flower, and it'll become more and more a potent part of your life. But the secret is always going to be listening. So I'd like to give you all a minute or two, and I would suggest, if anybody has a pen and paper, you all have computers of some sort in front of you, to write it down, what you're going to come up with after you finish, and keep a note of it, because as the weeks go by, you might add to it. It might become something deeper and more expressed. So what we're going to be listening to is, and I'm going to direct maybe a practical way to do this, listening to yourself, listening to your desire, listening to what you feel is lacking inside of your being, that what you're looking for. I want to have a relationship with a woman that includes intimacy. What are the aspects of that I'm looking for that I feel if I don't have, there's something missing? And when I do have, I feel very satisfied. And the more you can spend time, and before anybody says anything, I want you to listen to yourself. What would you feel is that so important to you that you need? So I'm going to ask everyone to close their eyes and take a few deep breaths. And the more quiet and the more space you can create inside of yourself to experience this, the more clarity you'll have listening to your neshama, listening to your body. And just listen. What is it that I am looking for, that I want, that I desire, that if I don't have, I feel such a lacking? Anybody who's ready to move on, open up your eyes so I can tell we're ready to go. Okay. At this point, I think I'm going to let everybody hold with it and not share with it right now. And maybe we'll talk about it at a different time. What is the purpose of the world? What did Hashem want to do when He created the world? So we know from the Ramchal and others that He wanted to create the world in order to give us ultimate pleasure. That the whole world was a creative, unconditional love, that the goal would be that we should have the most incredible pleasure that is known to the world, which is called Lisaneg al Hashem, v'lehenos miziv shchinoso. How did this supposed to happen? How are we going to get to this pleasure in our lifetime? This happens through a process of connecting to Hashem, because until we can experience Hashem, we can't have the highest pleasure, which is Him. So He created a world that facilitates something called dvekus, connection, love. The experience of connection, that what happens when you're connected, you feel deep and intense pleasure. And the entire world is a mashal, is a way of teaching us how we, through our free choice, can create that relationship. So we have an entire world full of all kinds of examples, all kinds of midos, all kinds of learning opportunities, where we can learn how to create that intimate dvekus, that intimate loving connection, and thereby experiencing full-blown pleasure. If you look in the world, what are the most pleasurable experiences and what are the most painful experiences? So we know that parents and children, when children feel loved by their parents and connected to their parents, they have incredible pleasure and safety. When parents have connection to their children, they feel very happy. When chas v'shalom, the opposite happens, incredible pain. So we see example, and the same thing for siblings, and the same thing for friends. We see an example how high-powered. When there's connection, then there's pleasure. When there's disconnect, then there's pain. All of those are to teach us midos about connecting to Hashem. But there's one relationship which is a full-blown, much more higher expressed way of understanding the relationship we have with Hashem, and that is a man and a woman. In that relationship, the midos are a higher, more refined expression of what intimacy looks like, what dvekus looks like, what connection looks like. Because the midos that are necessary to put those two people together connects them in a way that is, there's nothing like that. And therefore, the highest form of pleasure that exists in this world is the chibur between ish v'isha. And the most painful experience in this world is the separation between ish v'isha. Because it's a mashal of the relationship with Hashem, that when we connect, we have pleasure. When we disconnect, we have pain. So if we want to look at, understand the omek of the relationship that we want to have with a woman, and a woman wants to have with a man, one of the ways we can learn about it is our relationship between Shamayim and Va'aretz, Hashem and us. We know from Shir Hashirim that the best mashal to describe our relationship with Hashem is a woman and a man. And we are women in the relationship, and a man is Hashem. Which teaches us that a man, his midos, the things that are important to him in this world, his desires, the core of his desires, are the ones that he wants to be like the midos that Hashem uses to connect to us. His side of the relationship, in the loving intimacy relationship that causes so much pleasure. And a woman's desire is to be like how our midos are towards Hashem. And if we want to have a deep understanding of ourselves, we can look towards Hashem and how He relates to us and understand deeper what we're actually listening to. it validates us and saying, hey, oh, now I understand why that's so important to me, because that makes me like Hashem. And the more you realize that, you will understand how actually deeply important it is. As an example, when I started and I asked David, is it a good thing to want kavod? And it was like, oh, I don't know, maybe not. And then I said, well, Hashem does. Ah, okay, it must be something good in it. The same thing is true for all of these mitos. As soon as we realize the makar of them, the source of all of them, that they start with Hashem and we feel them because we want to be like Hashem or Etzelem Elohim, that gives us, first of all, a very positive relationship with them. And second of all, teaches us how the full expression of them will give us the most satisfaction, the most pleasure. Because that is the point. The point of why they're here is to teach us, have us embody those mitos that Hashem has. So before I go on in details, does anybody have any question on what I said so far? I'm going to add some clarity to it, so if you don't feel total understanding of it yet, that's fine. Yes?
Quick question, Rabbi. Are we suggesting that any desire that we were given is therefore it can be channeled into a positive desire? Just because Hashem gave it to us, it means that it is also something, it sources from Hashem, and therefore it can be used for good. There's no negative desire?
The core, yes. A human being is inherently not negative.
We have desire for lust or desire for, I don't know, there's no, at its core, it's just, there's no desires are negative.
Exactly. I challenge you to go deeper and deeper in yourself, and you will discover this truth on your own. I think that the single most negative look at desire, usually internationally, is sexual desire. Hopefully when you finish this class, you'll realize that that is so completely not true. There's nothing farther from the truth. So, yes?
I just was wondering, when we're our full expression of ourselves, so then I think I would understand that whatever that deeper desire is would then have a full expression in the positive way. But when we're not yet at that point, we're still kind of struggling with that desire in a deeper level, but we haven't gotten there yet, which is obviously a life's journey. So then I would kind of have a sense that the losa say, the need to hold back and create boundaries and create certain amount of guidelines will be essential, because, and it's, we're not necessarily in touch with that. We're not necessarily able to express that fully. So hopefully we'll get to that full expression. But if we don't, so it just seems to me like, okay, I understand in the theoretical, and also hopefully as we get closer, it'll be more positive. But until we get there, it seems to me like there is a strong need for guidelines and like, don't go after your eyes, don't give, whatever else that might mean, for us.
The definition of guidelines is to ensure that it stays into what it is naturally. Means don't get confused and have your desire go to a place which isn't actually what it wants. It's a guideline to preserve your connection to your true self. That doesn't mean it's always going to be the easiest thing in the world, but since that's the goal, and since that's the constant paying attention to that, it can always be a part of your life. As opposed to suggesting, well, since I'm not complete purity right now, then I can't access it at all. That's not true.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, I'm not making it black and white. I don't want to belabor the point. I'm just saying.
Guidelines are necessary. Yeah. By definition, the most important thing is guidelines. You see where Hashem created the world. He wanted to give us full-blown pleasure, and he didn't. Because if you don't make guidelines, you messed up the pleasure. If he wouldn't give us bechira and have us have free choice, then we wouldn't have a full experience. He's like, no, not yet. So sometimes you actually have to withhold in order to create something much bigger. There's no question about that. But right now I want to stay out of practicality because it confuses the topic. I first want everyone just to be in touch with what is exactly that I'm looking for. Then we'll figure out how to get it. But what is it that? So if we look at Hashem, what is the main midos that we experience from Hashem on a day-to-day basis? He's a creator. He's a giver, provider, protector. He's strong. All different shemos that we use all the time in Shemon Esrei, right? If we think about from ourselves, what is the most important thing that you think about all day long from Hashem? Is it that you want his ruchnius? Or is it that you're hungry? What would happen if Hashem told you, guys, you guys are amazing, I love you, Klal Yisrael, wow. Your Torah, your tefillah, psh, wow, my favorite. But listen, if you're hungry, don't talk to me. Because you guys are responsible human beings, you guys are smart, go make your own food. And if your enemies come, the Arabs or Hamas attack, don't know tefillahs. Guys, come on, you got a good army, Tzal, come on. How would you feel? Quiet group. How would you feel?
I'm having a little trouble conceptualizing that, honestly, because God wouldn't mean a completely different thing in that scenario.
Exactly. The first consciousness that we have of Hashem is a provider of the most basic needs. That's why the Torah is full of if you shema tishmu, if you listen to what I said, you know what's going to happen? You're going to have food. Not food, good food. You're going to have a safe house. Chazal say the Hal Hagadol. Why is it called Hal Hagadol? Because it says Noisen lechem l'chol basar ki le'olam chazdoi. That's the biggest expression of Hashem's chesed. Is mefarnes kol beria veberia, right? So the places that we feel like Hashem's love, the intimate places that we feel, are in the most simplistic parts of our life. The most consistent, the most simplistic, the most necessary. Food, shelter, protection from enemies. In those places, that's where Hashem expresses his love. And what else does he give us? He gives us himself. As we know, Hashem gave us the Torah. What is the Torah? He didn't just give us some ideas. He didn't give us some training. He didn't give us some guidance. Anes nafshes ksivis yehivis. Hashem wrote himself in the Torah that after a person learns Torah, kol ha'ela kulam kedoshim u'besoicham Hashem, that a person can experience from his own world. The Torah teaches you how to see Hashem in all of your life. And now we experience Hashem as like we have an intimate relationship of oneness. So what another great thing Hashem does is gives us himself. Now if we look at a man, the Tzelem Elohim, what do we desire as men? What do we want our wives to say about us? What do we want to feel like, yes, I did this?
That we are providers, that we provide food. We're good. A good husband is somebody who is a good provider.
What else?
That they are. I would want my wife to say about me that she's completely dependent on me and that she can't do without me, not just physically for the fact that I give her money to buy food and water, and basic needs, but also that I'm the only person who can provide her with the extras of life as well, the pleasures, the jewelry, the sexual pleasure, and she sees me like basically the same thing as what Yisrael was saying, but just like that it's so completely only from me, and that she depends on me with such complete, like so narrowly and completely dependent on me for every tiny little thing, which I think is different to neediness. Like it's emotional neediness. I don't mean that she should be needy and clingy, but that she's her own person. She's seeing that she needs me. She can't do without me.
Okay, so we can refine that.
I think what Yaakov is saying is he's saying that he wants his wife, please God, your future wife, to to depend on you emotionally, not just for your sustenance, for your physical food, but also for her emotional needs.
You got it exactly.
Sorry. I put it into one word.
Perfect.
I just want to add, it sounds like a very base, kind of very physical, almost animalistic level. But it's interesting to note that from what you said, about all the things that we say about Hashem, that he's also, the strong, and he's the gibor, and he fights the battles and the whatever. And it's I think that also is, deep down, that men also want to feel, in addition to all the kind of more politically correct things that people will focus on nowadays, I think that's also a very real thing. It's just interesting that we actually say that about Hashem, that people also want to be viewed as the strong one, as the whatever, and they want their wife to think of them like that also.
So to respond to Yaakov and to Yisrael, what do we say? Anochi Hashem Elokecha, lo yeh Elohim acherim al panai. That there should not be, we as human beings should not have any other source of the creative energy, the sustaining energy that we have from Hashem. We shouldn't try to get it from somewhere else. It should be an intimate relationship where we get our safety and our protection and our being provided for, one place, from Hashem. One place from my husband. What do you think the deepest needs of a woman is in an intimate relationship?
To feel loved, accepted, validated,
secure.
I think that.
Everything you're saying, Yisrael, is true, but the shorish is security. If you want to feel it for 1 second, just feel it. What do you need the most from Hashem? When He's close to you and you feel He's involved in your life, what do you feel?
Literally, if I put it in not even with a word, but this.
Batuach.
This exact thing, like a baby, complete.
Yeah, no. Not just, but the embrace is just an emotional expression.
No, not
embrace.
I don't mean embrace. I mean completely protected, completely
What we
say, a cocoon, like in a cocoon.
What's called bitachon, right?
Batuach.
Right?
Raboteach b'Hashem chesed yisavenu.
Exactly. So bitachon is that I know that my basic needs are going to be safe. If my enemies come, He's going to beat them up. Among other things. A woman's deepest need in a relationship is to feel safe. Is to feel that the ksuba, which is the marriage contract, is being niskayim. That, first of all, I can rely on him for food. I can rely on him for clothing, for jewelry, for a house, for health, for protection, for love, and the deepest, for him to put himself in me. If Hashem wasn't willing to connect himself to you, you wouldn't feel safe. Because he gave you the Torah, he says, I want you to be mine. I want to put myself in you. You're Elokeinu. You're my people. You're my nation. And therefore I'm going to give you my Torah. When a man wants to give his wife Zerah, he wants to be like Hashem. Because Zerah of a human being is themselves, is another small version of you. And the biggest gift you can give to your wife after you make her safe is to connect, to give her yourself. Then she feels totally connected and safe because she has you. Just like we feel totally connected into Hashem when He decided to come down to Har Sinai and say, here, now I'm in you. He put the Beis HaMikdash, He put the Shechina in Am Yisrael. And now we feel totally connected. So He put in us the midos of taiva, the shoresh of taiva, the shoresh of our sexual desire is to love, to give, to provide, to be strong, and to give ourselves over in the deepest connection that will never, ever, ever disappear. When a man gives zera to a woman, they are eternally connected, l'netzach nitzachim. And all of us have a desire to do that because when we do that, we step into our godless. We become Etzelem Elohim. To the degree that we do that more like Hashem, more loving, more giving, more providing, more connective, we become like Hashem in our essence. And we get in touch with the beauty. And we see, wow. If you see a person who loves their wife and they created a beautiful shalom bayis, every single person walks into the room, they can say, whoa, Shechina beinehem. The midos over here are pristine and beautiful. The way they treat each other, wow, what a special human being. It looks like that way outside the bedroom and it looks that way inside the bedroom. All the same midos. Love, connection, sensitivity, caring, giving, providing, protection. All of the midos of Hashem. And the most, you're mine. I'm giving myself to you. We're going to be eternally connected. A woman is like Am Yisrael. What do we want to do? What's our biggest cheshek in the world? We want to have Hashem, and what do we want to do with it? We want to create a world where He can exist. We want to give back to Him. First of all, we want to give karbanos. What are karbanos? Karbani lachmi liishai. I want to make him food. I want to build him a house. I want to make it beautiful and I want to make it run properly. I want to Beis HaMikdash. I want to make his world beautiful. I want him comfortable over here. And I want him to enjoy the things that I give. A woman wants to build. She wants to receive her husband. The same way a man wants to give zera, a woman wants to receive zera. She wants to become his, to be eternally connected. And she wants to take all of that love and all of that providing energy, all of that giving energy, and take it and build something beautiful for him. You give me money, I make you food. You give me a house, I make you a home. You give me a zera, I make you a baby. You give me yourself, and I make you into a melech. She wants to create. We as Baalei Bechira need to create. We need to do things in this world. We need to accomplish. We need to be like Hashem. A woman needs to create things in this world. And then one of the most things she creates is her husband and her children. We create kavod Hashem in the world. Hashem is nizgal in the world through us. And we decide how much his Shechina is nizgala. A woman is the yesod of a man. A man is developed in this world, built by his wife. All of these midos are the shoresh of the sexual energy that we all have. When we get to a physical plane, they have a physical expression. Similarly, if you think about it, to, let's say, a mother is taking care of her child. So what does she do? She changes diapers and she deals with messy faces and she cleans up toys. Is that what she's doing? Or is she loving the child? Building this child into a healthy, strong, loved, cared, protected human being. The physical is just the expression of something so much deeper. A sexual experience, if it's just a physical one, where there's no midos involved, there's no loving, godly energy there, it's just two bodies connecting together, they will not be satisfied. because their ritzonos that they actually wanted never actually came about. Their body had a reaction, but we're not just bodies. We're much bigger than a body. We're spiritual beings in a body. And therefore, if you have just physical experiences, or even worse, if there's physical experiences which don't have the midos of Hashem, they're not loving, they're not giving, they're not providing, they're not connecting, they're not sensitive, they're not connective, it's just an expression of a physical desire. What is the feeling afterwards? The feeling afterwards is emptiness. The feeling afterwards is the connection to realization, wait a minute, this is lo tov. This isn't what I am looking for in the world. And then people start associating and saying, oh, that's what that is. It's actually, not only is it not good, it's the opposite of the midos of Hashem. It could be very selfish. It can be using someone. It can be hurting someone. And then we start feeling, wait, that doesn't feel good. That doesn't feel what I want. That doesn't feel godly. And then we have an entire world, including the Nachash from Sheshus and Mebreshus, until the Nachash of today, teaching us that the fact that you desire the physical expression means that's all you're looking for. And you can be pulled to it because there is a pull on the physical level. Oh, that's what you're looking for. You might even be looking to hurt somebody. I want to hurt somebody? Oh, I must be bad. But now if you listen to yourself, and we spend time listening to ourselves, and you look what you wrote down, is there anything that you wrote down, anything that you felt, that is not completely in tune with the midos of Hashem? And is it not possible that a person can have all of his sexual energy go to a place where the only thing they'll be expressing is those godly midos? And if we would do that, what will your reaction to be to looking at that action? Would there anything but be total respect, total glory, total kavod? Is it possible to use that desire, get confused, not be true to yourself, and do something which is less than your essence? Something physical, something that doesn't care about anybody, that is selfish, that is using, that may even be hurting? Yes, it's possible. But does that mean it's its essence? When we have choice between these two things, what are we choosing between? We're choosing between being true to ourselves and being not true to ourselves. Choosing between doing something which will satisfy ourselves and choosing something that will not satisfy ourselves. By definition. Because the shorish of the ratzon is something which is totally godly. And if you don't accomplish that in your actions, you will not feel satisfied. And potentially will feel actually bad. Because you know this and this don't go together. My desire and that action, they don't go together. There's something wrong here. Yes, Yaakov.
So you're saying, therefore, that a sexual relationship that is fulfilling can only be in the context of a meaningful relationship, or else there will be no opportunity. Like, let's say, a prostitute, right? Let's say, I'll be open. I've been to a prostitute before, right? Right? So I went to a prostitute, and I didn't feel good afterwards, right? It's because I didn't have the time or the opportunity to express those midot, because she's not someone that I have a relationship with. I'm not going to see her again, that kind of thing, and there was no direction. There was no Hashem towards Am Yisrael and Am Yisrael towards Hashem, in me towards that woman and that woman towards me, because she's not my wife. She's not a relationship.
So as an example, you could say a prostitute is something bad. You could also say a prostitute lacks all of the potential good that you want, and therefore it's not good for you. Because it encourages you to think about yourself. It encourages the midos to become a person who's disconnected from their source and having their desires not be met, only met in a superficial way. That's why it's not good. Because it's not good. You haven't used that power to its core. You haven't expressed it in a way that will actually be true to yourself.
And therefore, the only way to have a fulfilling sexual relationship is in the context of a meaningful relationship.
Deeper than that, the more meaningful the relationship is, which means the deeper the marriage becomes, the deeper the intimacy experience becomes more pleasurable. The same way when a person has deeper dveikus as they get older, they have more pleasure with Hashem than they do if they're younger and less developed. Therefore, there's a lot of parts to the relationship that go way before physical. For example, as we spoke about, right? A ksuba, and we're going to learn about this more as we go on. A ksuba is a way of making the relationship into a more deeper, meaningful, satisfying relationship. Because there's more going on that the physical can express than there would be if it wouldn't be going on. So the siman is always going to be, how do you feel afterwards? And there will be certain points in time in people's life in the development, they may not be so acute and aware to what the issue is. I've had people come to me, all kinds. I have people come to me all the time. They're doing all kinds of things that you would say they shouldn't be doing. And they're like totally fine with it. Then I say, okay, so how do you feel? And I talk to them for a few minutes, and it opens up like this. I'm like, wait a minute. That doesn't feel good. There's something wrong there. What do I really want? Oh, I'm not getting what I want. Actually, that really hurts. I don't want to do that anymore. It could take 10 minutes. That doesn't mean their work is finished, but their ability to become conscious of something they thought was really amazing and totally satisfying was only to the degree they weren't conscious of themselves. When they become more self-aware, they become more in touch with their essence, they begin to understand, wait a minute, I want something else. I want something deeper. I want something more. So if we want to encourage people, if we want to encourage ourselves to have positive expressions with our sexual koach, the way to get there is to first access what you want, to know yourself. And from within your own self-knowledge, your own self-satisfaction, then start making choices. Then start looking at the world. Which means that the first thing that we need to do is become deeply self-aware. Deeply understanding of what's going on inside of ourselves, what are our needs, and give them a lot of respect. And find the core. The deeper you understand the core, the more you can be satisfied. And the more you can make choices that will serve you, that will put you in a place that you feel true to yourself. So we have about 10 minutes left, and I want to open the floor for some questions. Does anybody have any questions?
I just want to say, I want to come in here and I want to just say something that's been on my mind since before. You said that we have to listen to ourselves, listen to our desire, and what is lacking. So, what is it that we truly need? And you asked us to do this exercise by closing our eyes. Now, this actually occurred to me before you actually suggested or told us that we should do this exercise, which is, I think that there's a couple of nakudas, which is, basic and intrinsically connected to the soul of the human being, the neshama of every single person, especially every single yid, every single Jew. First of all, we know it says, "Vayisem ke'elokim yodei tavara." So we know from Parashas Bereshis, when the Nachash told, right, Chava, when he had to persuade her, he said, "Look, if you're going to eat the Eitz Hadas, you should know that you'll become like gods, yodei tavara, and then you're going to be able to be creators, just like the Eibush that creates, so too, you too can create too." There's obviously a lot of truth in these words, because, you know, in sheker below emes, and if it's more done in Torah, which is Torah's emes, so obviously there has to be some truth there, which is that the idea of opening our eyes, and maybe the intrinsic ratzon of every single person is, like you said as well, which is that we want to be creators. We want to create like Hashem does. And I think that's maybe one of the intrinsic human needs, which is to be a creator. We want to emulate and copy, this midah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that we can also create, just like God does Himself. So that was the first thing that crossed my mind. I don't know whether it's, as you say, whether it's, something that, you agree with, but something that definitely crossed my mind. The other thing is that I was thinking to myself, the idea of having pekichas einayim. So this is also part of the story of the Nachash and Chava again. When you can open your eyes, which means that suddenly, vayiru shnei ma'arumim, ha'adam ve'ishto, v'lo yispaishashu, the Torah says, that they were not embarrassed. They didn't feel their nakedness. And all of a sudden, the moment that they suddenly came across the Eitz Hadas, so suddenly their eyes were open to a brand new reality, and hey, good morning, America, good morning, good morning. And suddenly they were able to feel this nakedness, which they didn't have a hakara, hargosha. They had no no real awareness of this before, of what the definition of Toiv and Ra is, like they had after the Chet Eitz Hadas. And I think that maybe the Bechira is another intrinsic thing, because you were talking about another Bechira, which is that we, having this idea of knowing what it is that we want. And I don't know, it's sometimes difficult, but we want to be, while we want to be creators, we also want to have this true Bechira Chavshis, and to be able to choose between good and bad. I think that it is tough, it is difficult, because sometimes you know that something is there which is bad for you, but you still go for it, you still do it, especially where we have that instant gratification, where we need to stuff that, that black void, the vacuum, the emptiness, the hole in our minds and our hearts, even for a few seconds or for a few minutes of pleasure, of temporary pleasure. Sorry if I've gone on a tangent. I'm sorry, Rabbi. Okay.
Well, the one thing that I would encourage everybody to do what you're doing is you asked me if I agree or not. There's no topic of agreement and disagreement in this sugya, because it's a subjective experience. I'm encouraging all of you to be true to yourselves and think about things in the way you think about them, because that's you, and that's your world. And that's what's relevant for your growth. Yaakov, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, thanks. So basically, I know what I want. Let's say right now that we've had this shit, and I know what I want. I know where it's all coming from, and I understand that hidden underneath my desire for sex, that sex is just the physical manifestation of something much bigger, and that really what I actually want with the sex, right, with the sexual connection, the physical bodily connection of sex, right, is all of these midot, and to be able to express all of these midot on a spiritual, emotional realm, not just with the physical. And that's why if I was just going to do with the physical, and it's just a physical act of two bodies connecting, but I'm so much more than a body, and therefore that's, so like if I was just going to do with the physical, then I wouldn't feel fulfilled. So I know that now, right? Nagid, now I know that, right? So I know that very, very well, and still I want to watch pornography. Like, how is it now that I have such a yedi'ah berurah, that I really understand this now? And I really know, like not just like ve'yada'ata hayom and nevashevota el vavecha, not just like in my head ve'yada'ata hayom, but also I actually feel that this is exactly what I want. What we're saying is exactly what I want, and therefore pornography is not the way to get it, and I still want to watch pornography.
Good.
So, how is that?
Okay, so there's two parts to the answer to that question. The first part is, all you've now have discussed is yourself. Now you need to spend time discussing pornography. What does that do to me? Because now, if you understand what pornography does, you can make a decision, does it serve me or not serve me? Until you really spend time facing that and noticing that, then you don't have free choice. That's number one. That itself is only half an answer. The second thing is that we're going to be discussing that in the second and the third shir. In the fourth and the fifth shir, we're going to be discussing the other problem, which is that it's very possible to know all the truth, to know what you want, and what pornography is, what a prostitute is, what is masturbation, what is outside of marriage, sexual experience outside of marriage. You can get it super clear. But at the same time, you can decide to do all of these things because you feel that it's worth it anyway. I have such a deep need for something in my life today that if I don't have it, it's not worth going on, that I will settle for something even not what I want. When a person is hungry and they have no food, they eat garbage. They don't want to eat garbage, but they eat garbage anyway. The problem is they're hungry. So in order for us to be successful and not eating garbage, we also have to not walk around deeply hungry. Which means that these midos that you need to have satisfied in your life, they are not supposed to be always walking around hungry all the time and only get satisfied when you get married and sometimes in your marriage. These midos are something you're supposed to be living with from the time you're 13. Just not necessarily with the physical sexual expression. But these midos need to be there. So we'll need to examine in ourselves how much of my life is actually feeling, like you said, Yisrael, do I have a big black hole that I have to fill? Do I have a void? Because if I do, then I will be forced to eat garbage. And I'll tell you a secret. Not only will you be forced to eat garbage when you're not married, you'll eat the same garbage when you are married. Because a void is a void. And you will feel it and always have the run to need to fill it. Only a healthy person who has other ways of also fulfilling those needs can have them fulfilled at another level in an intimate relationship with their wife. But if they're walking around empty, black hole beings, then they will find that no matter what stage of life they're in, they'll be forced to go after it. That's why we're going to be spending in the fourth and the fifth shir understanding ourselves, listening again to the shorosh of these needs, and finding how often they're in our lives feeling empty, and what we can do to satisfy them that goes beyond the simplistic and very limited expression of a sexual experience. But that's like a, what do they call that? A spoiler. That you're going to have to wait till the fourth and fifth year to hear about. Okay, Chavra, it was wonderful learning with you. And I'm going to be putting this recording on the WhatsApp as soon as I upload it into YouTube. And you're welcome to look at it, to go over it again if you want. And I'm looking forward to seeing you next week on Sunday.
Amazing. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. Can I
Yeah,
just
thank you. This is amazing.
can I just make a request that the recording you put onto the WhatsApp group be something that can be accessed without a link or without, like, because like my parents all get filtered and everything. So like if it's just like something I can access, if it was a voice note, that kind of thing. I don't know if you know how to do that. But,
It's complicated to put a video or anything else besides YouTube, but we'll think about what we can do. Okay, have a wonderful night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.